Welcome to Movies and Lore. Today we're going to cover Season 3 of Bad Batch. If you haven't seen Bad Batch in any of the seasons, I would recommend you checking that out first. After the video, if you like what you saw, please comment, like, and subscribe. It'll help our channel grow and we can deliver more content directly to you. Thank you. Season 3 of Bad Batch. So far, I'm enjoying this season quite a bit. It has been very interesting seeing the story progress. What I'm going to warn right now is potential spoilers here and there, because I don't know if I'm going to just drop a spoiler in the middle of this talk. So I'll just be forewarned. If you haven't seen Bad Batch, I suggest you watch it first, and then you can come and watch the video if you would like. So you have been warned. Bad Batch Season 3 has been very interesting. Every season, we have seen Bad Batch get closer and closer to the Imperial era, or at least the beginning of it. Season 1 was basically the transition between the Clone Wars, like the very end of the Clone Wars, um, onto the Empire. You even got to see characters from Rebels. You got to see Kanan and his master and a few others. And you got to see what happened on the Order 66 side, but from Kanan's perspective and also from Bad Batch as well. And we traverse that story on, and it's a season 2 as well. And the main crux of Bad Batch has been a younger clone. And her journey has been from the clone home world onto joining the team of Bad Batch, and the Bad Batch essentially watching over her, even though she can watch over herself pretty well. However, her role has been, in some ways, the guiding force, the guiding hand behind the entire narrative of the Bad Batch. And the character I'm speaking of is Omega, who is essentially a clone, but a female clone, and also has not been accelerated. Her age has not been accelerated like every other clone in the Old Republic. And for some reason, she's quite special and has shown different types, not abilities, but like inclinations that has guided her to be a little different than the other clones. Even Bad Batch, who each of them have exhibited their own unique skill set. So I'll keep it at that, because once we start talking about abilities, then it could be confused for the Force and all that. But that's not what I'm talking about. Even though certain skill sets I feel like stem from the Force, and that's just my personal theory. Like Hunter, for example, he has this ability to sense his environment. And in season 3, the current season, there was a moment where he essentially detected that something was wrong in the air. And what he was detecting was the assassin, or, well, he was the assassin, but the assassin that was amidst their paradise planet. And he didn't know what was happening. He just knew that something was wrong. So he had a feeling. And for me, the way they demonstrated, yes, it's an ability or skill set or whatnot that they've exhibited in the past and other seasons, and even in Clone Wars itself. But for some reason, like when you start really thinking about it logically, like, you know, as a hunter, as Hunter, he can, look at tracks really well. He can judge if someone was in pairs or if there was multiple people. That feels like closer to what a actual hunter in real life can do. Maybe not as accurate, but at least you can. There's some parallel of reality there. But in the second to last episode that has really been released, he has almost in a way almost supernaturally detected that something's wrong. And I feel like because every living being has the potential to be a force user, I think his clone mutation taps in a little bit into it, but I don't want to segue too much into that. But the point is that Omega has been at the center of the story, and there's been many themes in Bad Batch in general, but one of the themes is that transition over uh, the utility of a clone and how they've been replaced by non-clones, people that have been recruited. And then you have all these clone commanders who are being now ordered by not by Jedi, but by Imperial Academy normal men who are not clones and are not Jedi. And there's a sense of detachment from their uh, ordering skill set, the way they command their troops, versus the way that the Jedi would train and command the clones. And there's just this like distance where each clone is just a tool in their arsenal. They're not really looking at them as individuals, but just as assets. And that's a theme that keeps going over and over in Bad Batch, and they do that pretty well. Um, in season three, however, I think they took it a step further. They increased um the viciousness of the Empire to a greater extent where they're outright sacrificing entire platoons and torturing them and converting them into these unnamed assassins without a clone code and sending them these like essentially suicide missions to do the Empire's bidding. And then in the previous season, it was revealed that Rampart essentially ordered the destruction um, Tapia of the clone world, the clones' home world, and the cloning facilities and all the mechanisms that was driving the creation of their army and the maintenance and their hospitals and everything that was occurring in that city was decimated just because the Empire was just like, you know what, we're not going to do clones anymore. We're going to do regular humans. We're going to discard these clones. And Palpatine did this whole essentially this whole mechanism where whether they discovered the plot, it didn't matter because he was going to capitalize on it anyway. And if they didn't discover the plot, then they still would have replaced the clones with regular humans. Either way, he was going to get that bill, which essentially replaces the clones, ends the clone production. And now you have a recruitment amongst the Empire, which is there's a reason for this. Obviously, the canon dictates this, but there's a reason why Palpatine wished to change gears in that regard. One, clone making was highly expensive, and Palpatine's drive was to create the Death Star. And the Death Star was driving all the Imperial funds in there. He also had the project of replacing the Venators, which were first getting enhanced and retrofitted to fit the growing Empire's needs, but they also were in line to get replaced to bring forth the Imperial Star Destroyers, which are much larger, which its utility is um, changed into a different type of system where the Venator was more about fighters and the ISDs were basically mobile bases where they can deploy troops and subjugate a planet or a planet that's in rebellion. They can put down the rebellion and bring down troops. Either way, that was their main focus. The point is, as a Star Wars fan, I always wanted to see something like Bad Batch, not necessarily because it's an animation or even the show in its format, but I wanted to see the Empire's transition from the Republic into the Empire itself, into the Empire that we got to see in A New Hope. And we got hints and pieces of what that Empire is, but in the Bad Batch, we get to see that transition, like where not that the Old Republic was perfect, but it was better towards the average citizens, and that can be debatable, but the average person had a more favorable view of the Old Republic, minus a few separatists and the like. But in general, all the dissent that was in the Old Republic was mostly pushed by Palpatine and Dooku. Yes, there were disagreements and whatnot, but that was um, pushed and exaggerated, and they made it worse essentially, where things could have been sorted out if there wasn't an agent of evil pushing agendas, right, and manipulations. So the point is, the Bad Batch is doing a great job, and even in season three, I feel like it's even better because now you're getting to know these clones as um in a deeper way, not just in the slot setting where they were displayed in the Clone Wars. I liked how they operate in the Clone Wars, but they were very one-dimensional for the most part. Okay, this guy does this guy does that. Almost like kind of like in a video game. Okay, this guy's the sniper, this guy's the does the technology, the other guy's the brute force or whatnot. And then you have Hunter, who is like the guy who is in charge and whatever. But you didn't really get to see them in emotional situations of attachment and all that. And Bad Batch does a great job, even not only them, but all the characters that have been pulled from the mold, like Cody. Cody was okay, he was a commander and he's very beloved by many fans, but we didn't know much about him other than what we saw in Clone Wars. In Bad Batch, we got to see this was season two, we got to see a side of him where he's actually analyzing what it means to be a soldier. And you see that as well with Crosshair, who Crosshair out of all the bunch had the least amount of personality, was the most one-dimensional character, in my opinion, in the team. But you got to see where he wanted desperately to be like one of the soldiers that were loyal. He wanted to be one of them that's following the imperial rule. That he wanted just to be a good soldier, and that was taken from him, and he lost his sense of purpose. His identity was lost, and once the Empire destroyed that, and then he tried to go back, then he lost his way too because his friends didn't trust him either, and there's a lot of resentment there, especially when he came back. And you see Omega being like the driving force to try to connect them. She's kind of like the heart of the group now. And initially, I'll be honest with you, I was taken back by Omega's character, just by the way they were presenting, because I didn't know what was the angle there, like what were they trying to do. But over time, as Omega's character grew, and we got less of the, I would call, filler episodes and more of the story, Omega just became an important part of the story for me at least. And she started growing for me as a character, and I started to see her value as a character and how her character was affecting the others, which is, I think, is the most important part of it. She was improving the others. Crosshair was ready to give up. He didn't want to escape that prison, but Omega kept pushing, and because she cared about him, regardless of what he did. And Crosshair didn't understand that acceptance that she was providing. And despite her being younger, in some ways she was older and more mature than the clones because she grew up to her current age without acceleration. So she got to experience a childhood that none of the other clones were able to experience. And even that alone can help the other clones analyze things that they probably wouldn't have thought of. And they have all experienced a life of war. And she kind of, she was in a lab and all this stuff, but her life is much different. Her life experience, which has helped the other clones settle into their new roles because all these clones have been always at war. They're born in training, straight to a war, and they never knew anything else. So they didn't know how to live outside that environment. Even Rex had to find a new purpose in his life. He had to find a purpose into helping other clones, but it still kind of fit the mold of fighting, right? So the clones, especially a Bad Batch, with Omega there, they started to behave differently. They started to change. And their characters, you started to see other facets of their characters, which I think is really cool. Even Wrecker, who's like probably the most one-dimensional character ever made in Star Wars, but even he started showing some depth because he cared about the others. He felt the betrayal from I for some reason I want to call him Sharpshooter, but from Crosshair. And you just saw that relationship and you start to care about these characters at a deeper level. And then especially when Tech died and yeah, you know one of the scenes, speaking of Omega directly, when uh one of the clones, I can't remember his name, he was leaving and she didn't understand that. She wanted to keep them as a unit. And she finally found herself belonging to a group. And then suddenly she started seeing like her group fall apart in some ways. And I like that idea where there's this sense of attachment, but attachment is not always bad. But in certain situations, people just have to go and they have to grow outside of the group. And that's something that she had to learn. And seeing Tech die, that was so devastating. As it was, he's actually my favorite character in the Bad Batch as the group. Um, and seeing him die was a huge deal. And I kept expecting that he was just going to show up, and he may have, but I don't know. I'm still hoping that he might show up later. But I also respect if they commit to him being dead because so many characters that we know now just keep resurrecting in the Star Wars universe and they just don't stay dead. And sometimes there's more value to making a decision and sticking with it because the story dictates that, you know. So I'm for the story, obviously. You know, I love Star Wars and all that, but the story, you know, anything that serves the story, I'm all for it. And the lore as well, anything that expands the lore. Anyway, so I think season three is off to a good start. I guess we're reaching the tail end of it. Um, so very soon we'll start seeing what is in store for the rest of the group. But after uh Crosshair returned back to the group and basically made amends, that actually that episode where he and Hunter basically kiss and make up, they dealt with, you know, the monster of the week, which I can't stand sometimes, but the underlying message there, which a lot of people I feel missed, was not that it was the monster of the week. Even I was kind of missing it at first. And I actually watched the episode a second time, and that actually improved my view of it. There was a message being sent that there was this the elephant of the room was the monster in the episode. The elephant of the room was that Crosshair had to atone for his betrayal, and Hunter had to see what was going on with Crosshair. But there was something very interesting that Crosshair told Hunter, and essentially was that um, there is some guilt that Hunter was portraying was projecting, sorry, towards Crosshair, and that was making it harder for him to accept Crosshair for what he was and accept that people make mistakes, that there's a reason why he betrayed, quote unquote, betrayed the group. And it wasn't just because he wanted to be evil or that he's evil. It's just that he was fighting for a sense of purpose in himself. And he felt that he wanted to become part of something greater. You know, all this time he's been in the Bad Batch, they've always been like in a way a rebellious group doing whatever the hell they wanted. And occasionally, you know, they follow orders, they join with Rex in the last season of Clone Wars, um, in to help out against Admiral Trench and all that. And they were a big part of at least the beginning of that. But the point is that eh, Crosshair has never been part of something greater than himself before, something greater than the immediacy of the group. And that was the reason why he left. And Hunter didn't understand that. And Hunter also didn't want to accept at face value what Crosshair was saying. And that whole episode was just them reconciling, reforming the group once again. And Omega was a big part of it too, because she was trying to soften both sides, and she was just trying to get them to talk. And at sometimes, I feel like Omega not only is the heart of the group, but at the same time, she's also like almost like the consciousness of the group, right? So she was imprisoned in that dreadful place, where they're making experiments and all that stuff, and playing with midi-chlorian counts and all that. And she was there, and she realized that, after she got on Crosshair to escape, she kept trying to see if she can save the other clones, and it was like a big thing. And I agree, they can't remain there. She has to do her best, but Crosshair kept her grounded and said that they can't do that. Like, if they try to help them, they're just going to get imprisoned again. And jumping back to the current episode where Omega gets captured again, for a bit, I was like, oh, that she got captured again. And now we got to go through this again and all that stuff. But it made sense because how else are they going to find the base? And I believe Crosshair shot the tracker from the sniper and he missed. So I think they're back to square one, I believe, because I don't think there's another tracker unless they twisted, and then like the next episode they reveal that she had a second tracker, because when the not the clone, the stormtrooper scanned her, he like stopped immediately after he found the scanner, the tracker. But it's possible that she had a second one, maybe. I don't know. um so we'll see how that goes. I essentially wanted to talk about general broad topics about Bad Batch, but it kind of turned into a season 3 discussion. But in general, I just want to say, if you haven't seen Bad Batch, if you're still watching and you haven't seen anything at all, then you should go see it. I think it's a good show. Season 1 was a mixed bag for me. Season 2 wasn't that great for me. It was too many things that just kind of derailed the show for me. So if you can pick and choose the episodes that you might like, that might be a thing. I may drop that if you want. Um, you know, I can give you like a guide, like, okay, go to episode 2, go whatever. But either way, just watch it. The problem is that some people have a low tolerance, and that's fine. The show's not for everybody. So if you're not into the animation stuff, you're just not gonna watch it. That I'm not gonna suggest you watch it. But if you're okay with the animation, if you like Clone Wars, for the most part, you're more or less gonna like Bad Batch. Season 3, however, I feel like it's a must watch. There's things that are happening in this season that are building up and strengthening some of the holes created by the sequel trilogy. I'll leave it there. Granted, I did spoil stuff already. I did warn you guys. Um, the point is, Bad Batch season 3 is really good, in my opinion. So far, I have yet to see a bad episode. Uh, but I would say Ventress episode was okay. I liked seeing her. They left it kind of open ended, so her story, Dark Disciple, may not be invalidated based on how she was like, I live multiple lives, or whatever that phrase was. And so a lot of people were hung up on that, but for me, I'm okay. Dark Disciple can go away or stay; it doesn't matter to me. Um, Regardless of how the canon is, that novel, sorry, that Dark Disciple is still going to be valid for me. You know what I mean? So like, you can call it personal canon, you can call it head canon, whatever. The story exists, whether it's acknowledged or not. And that could be said of Dark Plagueis, the novel. A lot of people were annoyed that it's technically not canon, but it doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't. So like, it doesn't matter who says it's canon or not canon. The point is, did you enjoy the story? Yes. Do you like the characters that are in it? Yes. Okay, then that's fine. That's all that matters. At least for me, that's how I will evaluate those things. And and I get it. There's like a sense of ownership. If you read the book, you want it to be meaningful and all that stuff. And then when someone says it's not canon, then it kind of like makes you want to like react to it in a negative way. But I encourage you to just be open-minded and absorb the material that you like. In my opinion, Bad Batch is good materials. I can't speak for the other seasons, but definitely for season three, I think it's a good show. And it's sad it's going to end, but you know, things can't go on forever. At some point, um, the show has to end, and it'll up the quality of the show, right? Because the longer the show is, the greater the chance for it to start sinking now. Um, so if there's any point in this video at all, it would say that go watch the season. I would always say I would always almost say that you can even skip the previous season, just watch three directly. But there's some key episodes that are worth watching from both season one and two that would basically solidify all you need to know in order to watch season three without being lost. And I even think some people can watch season three and not be lost at all because it connects to things that are after Bad Batch, obviously. So Project Necromancer and all that stuff. If you know what that is, you know what I mean. And if you don't, watch the show. That's the best way I can put it. So why did I drop this video? This video is probably going to be the first of a series of videos where I'm going to discuss a lot of topics. It's going to be Star Wars, it's going to be Dune, it's going to be all kinds of movies and shows. Foundation is another show I love. I want to cover that and discuss. There might be shows I haven't even watched, and maybe someone will suggest it and I'll cover it. I'm not sure if I'm going to do episode per episode thing. But if there's a very big episode, for example, whatever, then I'll go into detail and stuff. And I think I'm gonna wait until Bad Batch is over to determine whether or not if I'm going to do a breakdown. I don't mind doing a seasonal breakdown. And we'll see. Whatever you like to see, just comment below. Please like and subscribe if you like what you see here. And I'll see you next time. Movies and lore. Take care.